Hello, Godzillavangelists. The episode you're about to listen to was recorded quite some time ago. You might even call it our lost episode, or if you're feeling pessimistic, like I am, our cursed episode. We had so many problems getting it to the finish line that I was scared to touch it. Much like one of Godzilla's radioactive scales left behind after a rampage or something. But our new editor, Julia, has come along in her hazmat suit and salvaged it. Hallelujah. For the most part, I think this episode sounds great. However, I did want to tell you that Joanna and our guest Todd are notably missing from the early part of the episode. Don't worry, they join us later on. There is also going to be a few outdated references or conversations, just so you're aware of that. And as long as I'm still gabbing on here, I wanted to tell you all that we've got a brand new episode coming down the line, and it's a very special 3rd anniversary episode that you will not want to miss. But for now, get ready to drift back to the mid-60s, put on your Devo suit, dance some go-go, and enjoy this episode. There is a legend of one man who persuaded his friends to watch every Godzilla movie ever made. This world is on the brink of destruction. We need you now, Godzillavangelists! Godzillavangelists, a Geek Stew Network podcast, produced and hosted by Ryan Sargent, featuring Sam Schlenker and Joanna Brodecki. Okay, so Sam and Joanna, I know normally we have our free range of things we talk about on this podcast, right? There's no boundaries except those of good taste. But today I feel like we have to be mature. We have to set some boundaries.
Honestly, not surprised. Yeah, that people on Reddit have been calling for it for a while. And the worst part was when you said that, I was like, oh, what did I say? And then I was like, wait a second, it's probably everything that I've said. Like, I can't, there's no one thing.
Well, no, we could still talk shit about all the terrible things about these movies. No. With the boundary that I'm setting today, no lemon jokes, no melted butter jokes, no Old Bay jokes. Do you think we can stick with that?
Yes, because I literally have no clue what you're talking about.
Because we're talking about Ebirah today. Because he's a giant lobster. He's a giant piece of seafood.
I hate you so much right now. I was like so confused, and I still am.
Oh boy, I don't mind telling you, our audience, that was our second crack at the intro.
How many lemon jokes does someone have?
Maybe that's a southern thing. When you're in Maryland, we're in Virginia, you put Old Bay on your crab, your lobster, all that.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, exactly. Okay, here's an Old Bay joke for you. Is, what do you call your ex who is really old now?
Sam, you're banned from the podcast. You just made an Old Bay joke. And also here with us, and hopefully way funnier and more put together than we are, our friend Todd G. Levin. Gonna say your name right this time. I'm so glad to have you back. It's always nice to have someone who loves these movies as much as I do. Today, it's a big old double feature of 1965's Godzilla vs. Monster Zero, aka Invasion of Astro-Monster, if you're a nerd. And then we have Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, aka Ebirah, Horror of the Deep.
I honestly believe that to be the butter one of the two.
Oh no.
What did you think about it, Todd G. Lemon?
This is our worst episode ever. Two very different movies despite their adjacent place in the Godzilla chronology. We got a lot to get through today. We got two big old movies to talk about, so let's dive right into the synopses. Here we go with Godzilla vs. Monster Zero. Sound effects at the ready. Two astronauts, Glenn and Fuji, go to investigate a newly discovered planet behind Jupiter, simply known as Planet X. There they find a race of super intelligent people being terrorized by Ghidorah, who they know as Monster Zero. The people of Planet X beg to use Godzilla and Rodan to defeat Ghidorah, and in exchange will give Earth a wonder drug capable of healing all disease. Meanwhile, Fuji's sister Haruno is dating a struggling inventor named Tetsuo, or Tetsui, depending on the dub. His invention, the Lady Guard, is optioned by a toy company owned by...
It's called the Lady Guard?
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. The Lady Guard is optioned by a toy company owned by Miss Namikawa. On the astronauts' return to Earth, the Earthlings agree to the Planet X plan, and Glenn is revealed to be dating Miss Namikawa, leading to the first kiss in Godzilla canon, and the only one that would be seen until the 90s. Oh, that's disgusting. Planet X aliens emerge from hiding on Earth and cooperate with the Earthlings to take Godzilla and Rodan to Planet X, where they apparently defeat Ghidorah.
Oh, wait, they fight him.
Right, yeah. Fuji and Glenn also discover that Planet X is running out of water, and all the women there look like Miss Namikawa. Unfortunately, Tetsuo is captured while investigating the fate of his invention, and the Planet X aliens threaten to invade Earth, using the mind-controlled Godzilla, Rodan, and Ghidorah. Miss Namikawa confesses that she is a Planet X alien to Glenn, and she is killed shortly before his capture. However, she gives him a note revealing that Tetsuo's invention scrambles the alien's brains, or something like that. In the end, Glenn, Fuji, and Tetsuo team up to create devices to remove the monsters from mind control and take down the alien UFOs. They succeed, and then Godzilla and Rodan once again repel Ghidorah from Earth.
Yay!
So, in complete honesty to you, the audience, as we always are, this is the third attempt we've made at recording this Monster Zero discussion. So, if we sound a little like we're skimming through it, it's not entirely the movie's fault. So, Monster Zero, aka Invasion of Astro-Monster, what do you guys think of it?
You know, it's a movie, so...
Wow. Yeah, we've recorded this 3 times. I think I'm getting more positive each time. But I think that maybe the biggest weakness for me is that I think I like it less than the ones that precede it and succeed it. I think that I like Sea Monster and it's Ghidorah's before this, right?
Right.
And yeah, I think that's my problem with it is it's a little less remarkable to me than those. But it was a good time. I liked it.
Here he is to sway me with the campiness of it. I'll leave this episode being like, I loved it.
I love this movie.
What?
It's definitely like a top 5er for me. I always just really enjoyed it. It's got all the things that I kind of want. I get that, there's not a lot of Godzilla in it, and it kind of is a little boring. Like, I'll give it that. But I rate Godzilla movies just in a different, my own kind of way. And this one has sci-fi shit and UFOs and aliens that look like Devo and all kinds of just great things that I like very much, that I want to see in a Godzilla film. Some one-liners, some fun, there's funny Americans in it. I love funny Americans.
And it's definitely the first one that feels really 60s. It's not the first one in the 60s, but you watch, you're like, oh, this is 60s.
Yeah, it's really drenched in that, we're so fucking pumped about the moon landing kind of thing.
Everything is poppy and, it has a lot of great miniatures and everything. But it's also the reason that I thought that this was so great is because I'd never seen Destroy All Monsters before. So I had no clue that there was an amazing movie with aliens and, tons of monsters and stuff until I saw it with you, Ryan, in theaters. I had no fucking clue that movie existed. So Monster Zero is always kind of that movie for me. But I could see in a world growing up where Destroy All Monsters exists, I could see this movie maybe, being a little further down on the list.
That one's my favorite, so I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, Destroy All Monsters is kind of the plus version of this. Believe me, we'll get to it pretty soon here on the show.
I've never heard of it. Sea Monster, though, top of my list for sure.
The hype is building.
That was the only one I had ever seen before this. But to be fair, I watched the first like 25 minutes at Ryan's house when we were in college, and then I had to leave.
Right, mysteriously.
Yeah, and it was, I have to admit, I don't think I was, even when I was there, I wasn't like paying a ton of attention to the movie, but I did have to go. But so basically I have fresh eyes on that. I'm excited to finally see it with a real context, and also see the end of the movie.
Yes, the famous shocking ending of Destroy All Monsters.
Is it a twist?
Not at all. But speaking of the moon landing, this is a co-production with Hank Saperstein, good old Hank Saperstein.
Thanks, Hank.
We talked a little bit about him before, how he produced a bunch of these 60s and 70s movies, how he even helped make the deal for the 98 Godzilla.
No thanks, Hank.
I like him more now.
But yeah, he had a long history of helping out with Godzilla, and in this one he actually put the money up to help make it. So he was able to mandate some things, including he talked about like, oh, all these movies open the same way with a press conference, and I wanted to start on a much more exciting beginning, but the beginning isn't actually that exciting. It's just like a rocket slowly flying through space and a couple astronauts talking.
Yeah, you could really see that budget a lot in this movie.
I love those shots. Those are my favorite.
Yeah, the shots where like they're landing on the moon and like the little capsule is like coming down with a guy on it, and it's very clearly like it looks like in Toy Story 3 when like the Barbie house or whatever, it like comes down like all wonky.
That was what surprised me, was the not that there were miniatures, but that they were so blasé about the miniatures. It was like, oh yeah, we will just make you look at a little toy man in an unbroken shot. Like he'll be talking and you'll see him as a toy man.
For like the rocket ships, they weren't even like wavering them at all. They were not giving any kind of they weren't trying to move the background to give an illusion. They were like, we're just going to stick this in front of you, play some music. There it is.
And they used just like someone's round pool filters for the UFOs. So I feel like the budget was very thin. They just fished them out of the pool.
That being said, that's actually what it would look like in space if you were, you don't really move against the stars or whatever. You do just kind of move.
That's true. It's one of those things that's real, but it's not film real.
So it's actually more accurate.
So there was science behind it.
That reminds me of a great story. I feel like I've said this on the podcast before, but it's like so indicative of why these movies are the way they are. But Eiji Tsuburaya, who supervised the special effects for most of these movies. This was the same year, actually. There's a movie we're probably not going to watch called Frankenstein Conquers the World. And there's a scene where a monster picks up and eats a horse. And when they were looking at the dailies for the scene, his like right-hand man, his assistant, was like, God, that looks terrible. This is embarrassing. Like how bad the horse puppet looks. We have to reshoot it. And Eiji Tsuburaya was like, nah, it's funny. And he kept the shot in the movie on the logic that he thought it looked funny.
Much respect.
Does it look good or funny?
I don't know. I've never seen it.
Well, we gotta watch it.
Now we gotta watch it
ahead of
Sam
time.
and I we're doing a mini episode on
real
this.
experts on it, and then make you watch it and be like, we're converting you.
Join us, Ryan.
You're making me a Frankenstein Conquers the World fan. Well, technically it is the setup for War of the Gargantulas, which we gotta watch with my dad eventually.
Was Saperstein the impetus for Nick Adams casting?
He sure was.
That's where all their budget went.
I mean, he's good though.
Yeah.
I feel like you'd think, oh, American guy, yeah, but like he's quite good and delivers the silly.
He's one of the best parts of the movie.
Yeah.
Quite a charmer. They have a good dynamic duo going between the two of them. Their vibes are pretty fun.
Absolutely. Him and our handsome boy Akira Takarada.
Ah, so handsome. Not his handsomest, but
Right. Still fairly handsome.
When watching this, I was like, Nick Adams is great. What has he done? And I stumbled upon the true crime story that is Nick Adams, or the conspiracy stories around him, which is fascinating.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on Nick Adams on the internet.
do tell.
There definitely is. He died supposedly of a suicide. It's kind of a sad story. We won't go through all the details, but it's pretty interesting because he had close friendships with James Dean and Elvis Presley. And there were all these rumors sort of swirling around him.
Well, he had a tell-all book, like a memoir coming out. And then coincidence that he died? Yeah. I mean, well, about his stories. I mean, he was just like hanging out at their parties, watching them do whatever rich and powerful people can do. And then all of a sudden he like overdoses or possible suicide, which, you know, I guess in the 60s is just like, yeah, they're dead. Who knows what the cause is? could be suicide or overdose.
They weren't even trying back then. You know, he had a career. He was on a popular TV show. He got an Oscar nomination. So he had his time in the sun, and this was sort of right as it was starting to end.
But not his worst day.
No, he gives it his all. He is just cranking up the cheese, and he has all these great lines. Like
He's like, let's get married, bit it. He's like just running around town.
right, when I get back from space, I'll marry you. You dirty stinking rats. You double-crossing finks. Great outdated slang.
Solid 60s jargon.
Couple of smaller pleasures in these cast. We have Jun Tazaki as the scientist who's the lead scientist. He's very like dad-like. I find him very charming in this movie. And then we got Akira Kubo as Tetsuo or Tetsui, who's like, he is who I am in my low self-esteem moments.
Do you invent whistles or just machines that make very loud noises and don't stop?
In my spare time, I invent rape whistles that don't go anywhere.
And they look like, it looks kind of like a birth control holder. So it all is kind of in a theme there. Wait, but what is that conversation at lunch? What is his exact line?
The line is the brother of his is I can't remember now. Is he married to her or he wants to marry her?
They're either dating or engaged.
And her brother, to his face, says, "I care about my sister, and I don't think you can make her happy." And then he says, "Yeah, I know."
Just fully aware.
He's like, "Yeah, no, I can't."
I'm inadequate. I mean, I don't even know what to tell you, unless I suddenly strike it rich and save the world. That'll never happen, though.
One of my notes, and this is like a very personal thing, but just whenever someone falls through a trapdoor in a movie, it just is like, ooh, yeah, trapdoors. And I wrote that down that, yeah, it'd be like, are you guys not just thrilled whenever there's a trapdoor?
I wish in season 1 of Westworld they just had a trapdoor somewhere. It would really lighten the mood.
Oh, yeah. Do you not ever, if someone like knocks on a front door and then falls through a trapdoor and then it cuts to a different scene, you're not like, I'm in. Like, what? Because there aren't that many. There's no uninteresting use of a trapdoor. So there's one in this one. So bonus points for that.
That is a great cut where he's just like, ding dong, whoa, and then you don't see him for like the next 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, well, right. Well, it's ding dong, whoa, and then just cut to the saucer. And it's just an unrelated scene. It's just to the aliens.
It's pretty funny.
Who's the head alien in charge? He is my favorite.
Yeah, the Planet X commander. He's played by Yoshio Tsuchiya, who is really fun to watch. This is his first Godzilla movie, but by no means his last. There's a really funny story where in 1954, Kurosawa cast him for like a small part in Seven Samurai, but then he heard that elsewhere on the lot, Toho was filming this Godzilla movie about a giant monster. And he actually went to Akira Kurosawa and begged him to be released from the cast so he could go be in Godzilla, which is wild.
I love this man.
If it weren't for this series like enduring and being beloved by a lot of people, like otherwise people would be like, you are insane. Like, are you kidding? I'm trying to think of a good comparison. That's like going to Spielberg and being like, actually, I'm going to be in the Haunted Mansion 2 with Eddie Murphy.
Did you guys know that SJP, Sarah Jessica Parker, was not supposed to be the original lead in Sex and the City? She was second choice. Someone turned that shit down. And now her and Matthew Broderick are laughing at everyone.
Who is it supposed to be?
I don't know. We don't know because she turned it down. She's an idiot.
But you probably turned it down for who was in Godzilla 98 who could have turned.
I was just gonna say the weepy girlfriend who was in 98 turned it down. And then last but not least, we have Kumi Mizuno, who is only really in this one and the other movie we watched, Sea Monster.
She's awesome.
But she's a fan favorite. She's very charismatic. She's got kind of a limited part in both these movies, but she has great costumes, like a great vibe. She's totally watchable. That sounds like very faint praise.
I was like, I don't know. She seems smart and fun to me.
The girl who turned down Sex and the City, her website just says totally watchable.
Back in the day, Kumi Mizuno was a babe, but she's got more than the looks. She's very clever. She has this nice, like, kind of edge to her when she's playing the morally gray part of God, what is her character's name? Miss Navakawa.
I could see her and Nick, what's his name, together. They both had this kind of like too cool vibe that worked really well.
Yeah, there's even a rumor that they had an affair together while he was filming.
Well, I don't doubt it for a second.
I wish there was some kind of memoir that could confirm that. Oh wait, he's dead.
It's kind of cool. It's not like incredibly daring or like steamy or anything, but to have an interracial relationship like this in a 1965 movie, that's kind of ahead of its time. It's cool.
Hell yeah. Even if she is an alien.
Especially if she's an alien.
Right. Technically an interspecies romance.
One of the new criteria I've decided to grade these movies on is how well they'd play silently in the background of a party. And this one would play very well because
yes,
the floating in the bubbles is like incredible. Like that's like an incredibly bizarre image where if you were just me 2 years ago going to a party and just being like Godzilla floating in a bubble.
These monsters sleep so well in these films. They're like the best sleepers you've ever fucking seen.
Oh yeah. Well, they sleep for like hundreds of years, maybe.
They get a rude awakening when they're zapped awake and then they like are smoking afterwards.
Yeah, why do you think they're so angry all the time? They just want to sleep and everyone keeps waking them up, so they have to go like destroy some shit because they're cranky.
Right? You know, as kind of a big guy, I need a lot of downtime to recover my energy. So as I can only imagine how someone, 200 times my size, they need a lot of sleep. But yeah, speaking of Godzilla, he's only in 7 minutes of this movie, which is the least of any Godzilla movie, both by percentage of screen time and actual screen time.
Yeah, but it's 7 minutes in heaven.
You've been working on that one through all 3 recordings of this, haven't you?
Yeah. I actually, it took 3 goes to finally come up with 7 minutes in heaven. That's why I'm firing on some cylinders this time.
You were just waiting for that. Now you're going to have no energy the rest of the podcast. But yeah, it's kind of interesting because the movie, for maybe the first time ever, isn't really about Godzilla. He's more like a moderately important plot device in this sci-fi alien invasion movie. So it has a very different vibe from anything we've watched so far in some ways.
Yeah, I think I actually like the idea of Godzilla being a piece of a movie. Like I like that in theory. I want to see another Godzilla movie to do that, where it's like, this is a movie that takes place in a world where Godzilla exists, but it's about something else. I think that feels like a thing I want to see. I think personally the alien invasion plot was like fine. It didn't like wow me. I wasn't as thrilled with this one as I was for like the first half of Ebirah, I guess.
They were just like, we have a medicine that will cure all things. And the people of the world were like, great, amazing. They showed like this one guy was like, I'm a doctor and I approve. And then this one guy was like, I'm on the Council of Women and we also approve. And they were like, check, here we go.
So it's funny that you say that because like they say like, oh, we have a cure for all diseases or all cancer. Like I know.
No, it was everything. It was just all diseases.
Was it all just all diseases, period?
Don't give them that specificness of cancer.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. I know that in the end it's all a trick. But if you're humanity and aliens show up and actually have been in your lake this whole time, and they're like, hey, if you do this for us, we'll give you the cure to all diseases. You'd be like, what the fuck? Give it to me. You've had it this whole time.
You might at least ask to see it before you do it, Like, let's cure all humanity of diseases and then we'll, like, help you out, And
that everyone was so shocked when they pulled a trick on them. They were all like,
this is the first movie of these types of movies. We don't know that yet.
Aliens can be evil?
We never know. Well, it's true. The only alien in these movies so far. Well, I guess it's 1 for 1. We have the alien ghost who possessed the princess, who was good. And then we had Ghidra, who was bad. So it's a 50-50 shot. They lost a bad bet.
I think if I were the leader of humanity, what I would do is ask them, if they're like, hey, we can give you a cure to all diseases, I would be like, you give me a deposit where you just cure athlete's foot. And so at least we know you're not messing around. Like, don't cure the big ones, but like at least like a down payment.
Right. Let's cure the common cold.
Yeah, you guys are talking even bigger down payment than I am. Just everyone who claims to have a deviated septum now doesn't.
Yeah, the funniest part of that is that it's completely unnecessary. It's the biggest plot hole in the movie is that the alien deception is just like They didn't have to do it. They could have just abducted Godzilla and Rodan, and all would have been well for them.
They really could have done it at any point without all the TV cameras there. Like, no one would have seen it happen. If they knew where they were already, they would just be like, all right, see you later.
Again, they've been in our lake. They are in the lake currently.
Yeah, and then, of course, Tetsui's invention, the supersonic rate whistle, makes the aliens' brains explode or something.
Can we talk about that jail scene?
Oh, you mean the soundproof jail cell that has bars and not walls?
Hey, those bars do a real good job doing their job, though.
They say, like, they're like, yeah, can't you use the rape whistle? And he's like, I can't. It's soundproof. And then, first off, again, by soundproof means sound in a room can't get out. And instead, like, there are guards on the other side of the bars who can clearly hear this. And instead, they knock on the bar and they're like, look, it doesn't make a sound. It's soundproof. Which is, first off, actually more difficult / impossible to make bars that don't make any sound when you knock on them than to actually soundproof the room.
It's a very limited soundproofing. It's just around 2 inches of the bar.
Yeah. Great.
Tetsui's invention saves the day. Yeah, the world is safe. You guys asked in an earlier episode if we would ever see Godzilla in space, and here we got him. We have a very fun and kooky fight where he fights Ghidorah on Planet X with Rodan.
A lot of rocks. A lot of rock throwing.
A lot of rock throwing, and he also does like a flying groin tackle at one point. He like jumps in, and I think it's like a kick to the face, but it's like definitely like just a groin first attack.
And of course, the jig.
So the dance he does at the end was a fad dance in Japan at the time called the shi or the shie. So it's literally just like, hey, all the kids are doing this. Godzilla should do it too. So the modern equivalent of this would be if in a movie now Godzilla was like dabbing or flossing or something like that. Which
he should do.
Felt like him straight up pulling a move out of a Mario video game.
He does kind of look like Mario doing like the one-up pose.
I'm a Godzilla. I'm a gonna win.
Later on, he also does his best Muhammad Ali impression with his, sting... God, what is it called? Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. He's doing a Muhammad Ali kind of thing and punching Ghidorah in the face. It's kind of fun.
And you guys ask why I like this movie. It's great.
I know. See, by the end, again, third time around, I'm tired at the start, and by the end, I'm like, this is pretty fun.
There's a lot to love.
But not as fun. Again, especially because we were watching it compared to Sea Monster. It's like, that is a top quality film for me on my list.
It's true. There's lots to love, but it doesn't quite compare to Sea Monster.
The memories are fond,
I think with all of these, though, like, if I just saw this movie just like on and I watched it, I like wouldn't think much of it either way. But Todd and Ryan being so enthusiastic about it just breaks me down.
Always.
And then it's like, yeah, you did do a jig.
They melt me like little... Yeah, exactly. I'm like, the bubbles.
Which is good. It's actually, that's why we're here.
What I like to say about it is it's a movie you can either liberally be on your phone during or fast forward through certain parts and enjoy it just as much, if not more, as if you're actively watching the whole thing. I know some hardcore fans will disagree.
To which Sam and I say... might be a few other ones where you can occasionally be on your phone.
Yeah, you can actually be on your phone in the other room during Rodan.
All right, now it's time for Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. Get those sound effect cannons loaded. Ryota, a young fisherman, believes his brother, lost at sea, is still alive. With the help of 2 acquaintances, Ichino and Nita, and a bank robber, Yoshimura, he steals a yacht and shanghais the other men into helping searching for his brother. After weeks at sea, the men are attacked by a giant crustacean monster named Ebirah, and they wash up on Lecce Island. The island turns out to be a base for a terrorist organization named Red Bamboo. They've been kidnapping the people of Infant Island for slave labor. One slave named Deo escapes and joins up with the men. While hiding, they find Godzilla sleeping deeply in a cabin. The group tries to sabotage the red bamboo, but fail and are split up in the process. Ryota is carried off to Infant Island, where he finds his brother Yatta alive, and the twin fairies working to awaken Mothra. Nita is captured, and persuades the other slaves to sabotage the production of a yellow juice that repels Ebirah. The others awaken Godzilla using a makeshift lightning rod. And our favorite monster goes on a red bamboo rampage. Eventually, the group reunites as Godzilla causes havoc and defeats Ebirah. The desperate red bamboo activate a nuclear bomb they have been building, leaving just 2 hours for everyone to escape. Fortunately, Mothra arrives in the nick of time, evading Godzilla to rescue our heroes and the Infant Islanders. Godzilla 2 makes a narrow escape before Lecce Island blows up to smithereens. So, I have an even cooler behind-the-scenes story on this one. Did you guys notice that there were some strange things about Godzilla in this one? Like how he was paying attention to a human woman.
Ooh, he had such strong feelings for her.
He seemed to have, get strength from lightning coming into him. Our old pal, King Kong, was originally supposed to play the Godzilla role in this movie.
I knew it!
Oh, weird. I thought you were going to go with Bride of Frankenstein.
I was getting such strong Phantom of the Opera vibes from this whole movie. In addition to the beach, it was like a beachy Phantom combo.
Weird. Why Phantom of the Opera?
Because he's possessive and helping, but he's too possessive to actually be helpful. He's actually a monster, but there's unrequited love, and he doesn't know what he's doing, and she's sad for him.
I feel like I watched a different movie.
I was going to say, you felt a lot out of the brief interaction they had.
It was only at the end, the last 10 minutes of the movie, that this came out.
King Kong makes a little more sense as, facing off against a giant lobster, though. I don't know why. That just sort of visually, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
It just clicks in your head better, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to have Godzilla fight another, sea monster, but it's almost like Godzilla's sort of part sea monster, so it is kind of weird.
The success of King Kong versus Godzilla was gigantic compared to every other Godzilla movie, and it was always on Toho's mind, so they were always trying to get the rights to do a follow-up. And finally, the rights were with Rankin Bass, and they sent Rankin Bass this script, and they were like, maybe try again. But they still liked it, so they just quickly subbed in Godzilla.
Who was sleeping in a cave.
He looked tiny in that cave, too. Relative. That foot they showed, I was like, it's kind of tiny.
He looks very uncomfortable in that cave.
I feel like this and the previous movie just have a lot of sleeping monsters. This feels like this is during summer break when these two stories happen, and the monsters are just taking their time. They're teachers. They're just you guys, humanity's fine right now. We're napping. Again, both rough movies to watch when it's late last night and you're very tired, which is how I watched these.
Did you feel like that moment where Godzilla sits down?
A little bit.
That's the best moment in the movie.
It's pretty good.
I'm like, oh, I've never seen this before. Godzilla's just having a sit, and maybe, just a little nap.
That's another very King Kong kind of trait, actually.
But they weren't singing. No one was intent. No, they were they just gave up on that. They're just he's fucking tired. All right.
I mean, he's been through a lot. He's made a major motion picture every year for the last 4 years at this point.
I'll be in my cave.
I will reiterate that no matter how much Godzilla's been through, King Kong has been through a lot more. In that one movie, he went through a lot more. He needs that sit.
Monster Zero, when Godzilla gets dragged somewhere, he's at least in this cute little bubble nap orb. King Kong is fucking tied down like an animal to the back of a rowboat. Very sad.
It's true. The audience, you couldn't see this, but as Sam finished talking, he put his hand over his mouth, and he looked like he was getting choked up with emotion for a little bit, as if he was genuinely hurt at how poor King Kong's treatment had been.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm really just here for King Kong and his rights.
You got a soft spot for Kong?
I do. And you know what? Even though he's not in this movie, I will go to bat for this movie. I liked it.
Ebirah was awesome. I've never seen this movie, and it was a total surf and safari, fun time, yet another 60s movie that was super cheesy and B-movie-ish and everything. Had a super weird-ass plot, but totally worked.
It is weird, and again, I made the mistake of looking up online to see what, how the internet and how lists rank this movie, and this is after me seeing it and thinking that's one of the best ones I've seen. And then and the internet's usually bottom 4 ranking But just tell me if this doesn't sound like an awesome movie. Is you just like sum up the story of this movie, and you're like, a bunch of guys steal a boat, turns out to be a bank robber's boat, and the three of them go on an island, and there's a terror organization who's kidnapping a bunch of natives to make juice, and there's also some monster conspiracy in there. Like, that's an adventure. Like, tell me you can sum up Monster Zero in a way that sounds as awesome as that, because like, it's great. It's great. It's like there's adventure, there's intrigue, there are characters that aren't just, there's juice.
It was totally fun, and because of the music, it kind of had this like Mamma Mia vibe too. Like everyone was just like having fun on and like I didn't know if Meryl was going to show up, but I was ready for it. She's up for anything.
Meryl was going to, but they subbed in Mothra at the last second.
Exactly. Mothra looks great in this movie. The blue coloring, it's like kind of new.
There are more minutes of Mothra asleep on that rock than not asleep in this movie.
I had to fast forward those, and at one point it was like 2 minutes long of just that.
Godzilla movies absolutely love the Mothra praying scene. That's like like the praying scene is always like the best part.
But the peanuts aren't here. Whoever has subbed in is this pale imitation that just can't even compare, so it's not nearly as compelling.
Ryan, that you're creeping me out.
At this point, I'm kind of over Mothra, Brian. I hate to say it. I'm kind of over it. I'm kind of like, we get it. Like, they dance, like, they're singing, they're tiny little females. We get it. And it happens every time she's like the Captain Marvel, though. Like, it's just like, what, Mothra can just save everything? That's not realistic. They gotta vary it up a little. She's been in like 1,700 films at this point. And it's not the Mothra series, it's the Godzilla series. Her story never changes. Never.
Mothra really just bats cleanup on this one. Godzilla did the heavy lifting. I have to blow right past that, because if I don't, I'm going to just break into tears. There is a scene where one of the characters makes a joke about Mothra, like Mothra could really use an alarm clock or something like that. And everybody laughs, and then Ryota is like, hey, don't make fun of Mothra. And I was like, that's this podcast in a nutshell.
That's exactly. I was like, that's Ryan saying those lines up there. I loved the lines in this one. Like, you have your hobbies and I have mine. Let's stick to them. And then at one point, this line really struck a chord with me. They were like, you're the mountain climber. And the dude was like, yeah, but I'm hungry. They're like stranded on a desert island. And they're like, please climb up these 2 feet of rocks because that's your designated definition as a character. And he's like, but I'm hungry. I was like, I get it. That's me in a nutshell.
Always being asked to climb a mountain, but you're hungry.
Exactly. People expect it of me. But like, I had to come face to face one day with the fact that like, if an apocalypse thing ever happened, I'm always like, I'm hardy. I'm a strong human. I'll make it. But I'm hungry every 2 seconds. And I wear glasses, so the reality is I would not make it at all. 24 hours max.
On the subject of great lines, I wrote a few down also. And one of my favorites was, is your brother crazy? Yeah, he's crazy. Crazy to help people in trouble.
I did love that. Something seemed like more sarcastic about this. Like, usually the most innocent, good-hearted character in a Godzilla movie is like the protagonist perspective. It's like, we're supposed to be on board with them and like understand them the best, and everyone else is too jaded. But in this one, it was kind of the flip side, where all the jaded characters were the reasonable ones, and Ryota was like a crazy person, and they're like, what's wrong with you?
And that 4-pack had like a nice dynamic. And then when the girl joined too, I don't know, there was just a good dynamic between all of them. Who the hell was dubbing the lines for the man in that yellow sweater? Like, was it Pee Wee Herman? Like, who was doing those lines?
Wait, are you talking about Yellow Sweater, or are you talking about Hoodie Guy?
Whoever was the one who, like, talked up here and was always, like, who had the most obnoxious voice in the world.
I'll just say, yeah, this, like, that foursome, like, traveling around on a jungle island, like, felt very like Johnny Quest to me or something. It's like, this one picks locks, and this one is just here. And this one's after his brother, and then there's a native who's helping, and it's like, I was here for it. It was great. This movie's awesome, guys.
How many locks do you think that man picked? I think he picked like at least 27 locks throughout the film. And every time he's like, I'm the lock picker.
He just loved it. That one time where he's like picking the lock and the people were in there like, dude, you're going to be seen. And he's just like, I don't see anything else but this lock right now. It's like, what? And then he opens it up and it's a nuclear reactor and they just go inside and then go out again. That was like the best part of the movie.
Yeah, I love that exactly. That the guys didn't notice him opening the vault door, and they also didn't notice that he opened the door to the reactor core, and just still, it was just like, nope, doop, 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 doop.
Like, shouldn't there be an alarm? I mean, we've all seen Chernobyl at this point. Shouldn't there be some kind of a beeping or something once you open up the nuclear reactor? I mean, damn.
I have to be honest, also, that guy, when he was like in the boat and they were like taking the boat from him, and throughout most of the movie, I found him to be pretty attractive. I don't know what it was. Something about his coolness and his lockpicking skills. I was like, all right, I'm on board with this guy.
He's got a nice little Cary Grant, to catch a thief thing going on.
He does, right?
Akira Takarada is our handsome boy.
Yeah.
He really is like relishing playing a morally ambiguous guy. You can just tell he's hamming it up in the best of ways.
He's hot, and he knows it.
Because he's usually like the pretty boy, lead actor, right? He's like the A-lister of these movies.
So I have I have an opinion that's going to really anger Ryan and possibly Todd.
Ooh, I'm excited.
And that is it Jun Fukuda? Is that who directed this one? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
I'm going to just say, I think he is I don't want to say better, but his handling of the general photography of this film, maybe other than the monster fights, is more modern, and I like it more than Ishiro Honda. I think this is a better shot movie. It feels like a more modern movie. I feel like the others have felt really stagey, but this one's like even our bank robber has like a great reveal. Like there's a reveal, and then there's that awesome shot of him like from behind his shoulder, and the guy is all on the other end of the hull of the boat. The transitions from scene to scene are real transitions that are good and carry momentum. It's just like, it feels like a modern movie.
I actually couldn't agree more. Couldn't really agree more. I mean, this movie looks so good. It's beautifully shot. Absolutely incredibly looking kind of film. So I love like all of the setups look really good. All of the transitions are amazing. It's really exciting. It looks like way better than this movie really should.
Yeah, and granted, we can all admit that maybe the budget wasn't put toward the action and fight stuff as much. It's a little shoddy at the end, but conceptually, again, I liked it. I was glad, especially watching this right after Monster Zero. I was like, oh yeah, this is a movie. Yeah.
I'm not as in opposition as you might think. I think Ishiro Honda was the right person to introduce these characters. I think that he had a really unique perspective and like beautiful naivete about how much he could influence world politics that was like perfect to start these off. But I think that he definitely got sick of them as time went on, and I think that had definitely hit by the time Monster Zero came around. So like having somebody fresh in the seat definitely like mixes things up, and I don't know, I'm a fan of it.
There were plot holes, but they didn't seem to stick out as much because like the campiness of everything in general was so big.
And I think even more than that, it kept moving. It didn't give you time to dwell on any weird plot holes that were happening.
Like, for example, why couldn't they fly off the island? We don't know. They're around in a time when airplanes have been invented, but nope, they got to take that yellow juice and go through the water and hope for the best. That moment when they make the fake yellow juice too was like, I was like, yeah, you fucking die. They did it. I was so proud.
For all of it's popular to hate on Ebirah because he's a lobster man, but the first or I guess second time we see him, when the two prisoners get off, like escape and row in the thing, and then not only does the moment he like smashes their boat is like, whoa, that was gnarly, like that was awesome, and then he spears them, and that was like horrifying. Like that was really good, and I was like, this is, again, guys, this is a movie.
And that was much meaner than anything else that came up in the film, but it really like shook you right at the beginning.
My man Ebirah is surgical with them claws. I mean, he just lanced those two guys like fucking a kebab, and just like nom nom nom. I mean, it's incredible. That scene's awesome.
I actually have a funny story about that. So this movie was basically new to me because I hadn't seen this since I was 7 years old. I saw it just twice. We rented it and I saw it twice, and I had never seen it from then until just a couple days ago. But I remember one thing about it because my dad would tell me this story, is that when we were sitting watching it together and that happened and Ebirah speared the villagers, and he like looked to me because he was worried because I was a very sensitive kid, he was like, oh gosh, this is like really grotesque. And I just turned to him and I said, villagers on a stick.
I would be so proud.
How terrifying. Children are scary.
Honestly, I'm more scared by you than ever. and are escaping for a new life. And
I know! It's horrible, because this is actually, there's some real stakes here. This is some grim shit. Like, it's very out of character for me. I don't know what was going through my head.
No, it's a Godzilla film. That's what, that's what kids are good at. They're good at, destroying things.
But as long as we're talking about the infant island of villagers, we should talk about Deo and Kumi Mizuno, who was in both these movies. She's only in these two, in the classic series, but she made a big impact on the fandom. People love to talk about her performances. What did you guys think of her as Deo?
Deo.
That was literally the joke I was going to make, named after the Harry Belafonte song.
Yeah, she was great. I mean, I love her fashion sense, but that kind of goes along with the 60s, pop sci-fi kind of thing. This movie's cool because it also has all my favorite faces in it. Like, she's in it, and then it's got Akihiko Hirata in it, and we talked about Takarada, but it's so great to like see all these people, and I love seeing Hirata in a villain role. He's awesome.
Yeah, and he got his eye patch back.
That was great.
This time with a cool red dragon on it.
That red dragon was sick.
The one part that I shook my head at a little bit was when she takes the cord of cable, and Akira Takarada is like, "We're not going shopping."
That was rough. I thought that too. And it's like, it's not like they were in there for that long. It's not like, he says it like, "Ugh, you've been shopping for hours," but it's like they just walked through the room and she picked up a thing, and he's like, "Women be shopping," and then they but then that coil of copper wire comes in handy when it comes to electrocuting Godzilla to life. I'll just say, and this is, again, this sounds a little patronizing, but the fact that they find a sword and then they're like, "Oh, that's like one of our swords," and it seems to have a purpose, and they find a copper wire and it seems to have a purpose, which is to say this kind of vaguely sexist joke. But then they actually come in handy and have a second use. That's the kind of stuff that I want from these movies. I want surprise.
That guy carried that sword. He was like jumping off cliffs with it, which he didn't land in the water, but he didn't know he wasn't going to land in the water. He really took a journey with that sword, so I'm glad it paid off for him too.
Also, back to waking up Godzilla, just whenever anyone says the phrase, "let's wake up Godzilla," that's just, to me, like the best idea that anyone, that's when things really have gotten bad. And you have the option, in any of these movies, "let's wake Godzilla" is probably, something great is going to happen after that.
His first move after he gets up of sending the rock, and just like the guy like sipping his coffee at Red Bamboo and the rock nearly takes his head off. That's a great introduction. That's like genuinely funny and charming.
I like the fact that in this one, and I felt, in response to Monster Zero especially, but I like that this one, like, they awake Godzilla and they're using the monsters, but they're not even using them. It's not about the monsters. They're using them because they're trying to distract these terrorists from attacking them. And it just so happens that the only move they've got is to, and like, that's great. I like that. It's not we don't get caught up in this movie being about the politics of, should we free Godzilla or should we send him to space? It's just like, nah, we're cornered by terrorists. They're making juice. Let's electrocute Godzilla.
Yeah, unlike a lot of Godzilla's other foes, I never got the impression that Ebirah was a serious threat to Godzilla. He always feels very outmatched from the word go. But in terms of like preying on humans, you're right, Ebirah is actually kind of intimidating in that context.
And I did like the underwater shot they threw in there of the fight between the two of them. I feel like we've seen him sleeping underwater, but we don't really see him fighting underwater. Yeah, so that was good.
You're right, because Godzilla, he's always been like at home in the water, but we've never seen him in action there. So that's a cool little twist.
It was a nice reminder of his abilities.
Speaking of crustaceans killing people, it's like this movie, at least Ebirah is like a much cooler and more intimidating villain than the one in Teenagers from Outer Space, because that movie, that's just a shadow. Literally just a shadow of a lobster that's hurting people somehow in the hills. And that's all that movie's really about.
And Godzilla also fights that giant condor, which for some reason I was obsessed with as a kid. I would write about that giant condor a lot. Like basically like in fourth place behind Godzilla, Mothra, in King Kong, I would talk about that giant condor, and I have no idea why.
Yeah, that was weird.
I was a blast.
I really just wanted to know you as a kid. Like, I would be friends with you as a kid, like right now.
Would you also be a kid in this scenario, Todd, or would it be you now?
I'm always a kid. I'm a kid at heart, you know? If there was some kid who was just like, yeah, and then my fourth favorite is that big condor guy, I'd be like, wow, this kid is awesome.
That condor was... I audibly said, what? When it showed up, because it's just like, whoa, all right, there's a condor. That seemed a little like there was a point where there was more of that condor. It was like a script draft holdover of some kind. It had to have been, because that was bizarre, and I'm here for it.
There's zero explanation. There's not even like a throwaway line like, oh, like their nuclear facilities are leaking or something. I know I called Ghidorah the Godzilla James Bond movie, but having seen this again now, this is definitely the Godzilla James Bond movie.
Totally. Even some of the music, that Secret Agent Man song, a lot of it sounded like that. A lot of Scooby-Doo vibes, too, when they're trying to get out of there.
I was going to say that, too. It felt very much like, you know, whenever they showed, like, the underground layer or whatever, it felt very much like they're sneaking around this big facility with all these people in uniforms, and, you know, it doesn't matter if they die, like, at all, you know, very much like a Bond movie.
There's some crazy stuff. There's stuff that sounded like Batman. There's like an upbeat, wacky dance track when Godzilla is fighting the planes.
I just love envisioning just like a 4-person band who's just like, yeah, sure, what the fuck, have fun. Why not? Go for it. And his trance, his like zoned out was so creepy, but he just fucking held it. Also, in the last movie, when you were like, it took them forever to like get anywhere and get to the plot. I like that within the first 60 seconds of this film, they were like, dead brother, gotta find him. Go. That was it. It was just like, all right, we're there. We usually would take 20 minutes setup. Fuck it. We don't care. We're not showing the boat drowning. We're not doing any of that. We're just jumping to him getting his sailboat from the go-go dancers.
I feel like we've glossed over the go-go dancing at the beginning, because that was great. Like, that from the beginning, I was hooked. I was like, he's like, I'm going to go steal a boat, find my friends, cut to go-go dancing.
In the dub version, are those two guys Ryota's friends? I'm not sure, because in the Japanese version, he just meets them there, which is like the wildest and funniest part about it to me, is that basically he kidnaps these two guys he's never met before in his life.
It was easier for me to believe that he knew them in some capacity for it to make any sense whatsoever to me. So
no, he was zoning out. They were like, dude, what's wrong with you? And he's like, I need a boat. And they were like, all right, let's help him out. It was very weird. I also will say on that news, like when they were like, this boat's been stolen, this big ass, fancy ass boat. The boat was like pretty tiny. It was not glamorous, I would say. I was like, who's this rich dude with a basic boat?
My favorite part about that scene is when they like get caught, like, you know, in the guy's boat, because they're like, I wonder who the owner is. And it's like, I'll show you who the owner is. And the dude's got a gun, you know? And he's like, what are you doing here? And then they act incredulous. They're like, we're just checking out this boat. We thought it was cool, man. I was like, what? Wasn't this the moment where you're like, oh, sorry, dude, we'll get out of here because, you know, you're going to kill us? And then they like stay. It's so weird.
Again, they're confident adventurers. They meet at a go-go dance. Actually, a swashbuckling moment that I really liked was the them getting cornered on the cliff and then them just dropping to a slightly lower cliff ledge where the guys can't see them. Like, that works. It's good. Like, and that's like, I hadn't seen that really before, and it was like I was in for it. That's a good little adventure moment.
There's swashbucklers. And just to let you know, there's like a contingency on the internet that likes Ebirah. There's definitely, you know, lists, Godzilla lists are really weird. And like, I kind of try and look for basically the top 5. And if there's a title that kind of comes up a lot that you wouldn't really expect in some of the other, you know, lists or whatever, that's one that I'm like, oh, okay, well, there's a decent amount of showing for, you know, sometimes it's Biollante or Ebirah or Megalon, or, you know, there's always like kind of like a cult favorite, and Ebirah is definitely one of those.
I was really pleased to see this again after so long. The only thing I can really criticize beyond like the like typical later stage Godzilla movie things is that if we're calling this 4 acts, the third act felt slow to me. It felt like somehow the pacing got off because the beginning was just driving so well. But it cleaned itself up at the end. The end is really fun, where you have Mothra swooping in at the last minute to save the day, and she has to evade Godzilla while keeping the people safe.
And they're all like weaving that basket as fast as they can with like massive leaves.
It's very orders of God, actually. Is Moses telling the Israelites to wander through the desert. Mothra says, build a net.
The third act got a little wonky. Basically, when you had Godzilla taking his sit down time, and then the Condor showing up. But then once the bomb, like the nuclear plant was going to blow up in 2 hours or whatever it was, then we get back on track, and they put a clock on it, as the screenwriters would say, and then we were. And then they escape the island, and that island blows up, and we see a big crack form and it flooding. And then we cut to our heroes, and one of them says, well, that island's gone forever.
Thanks for clearing that up for us. One thing I glazed by that I love when Godzilla defeats Ebirah and rips off his claws. I love the dick mood of him taunting him with clapping the claw shut.
Right before that explosion, when Godzilla does a sick cannonball into the ocean, he like really had to hoist his legs up high, and he achieved pure peak cannonball form.
Again, that's a very Bond escape. Godzilla gets out at the last possible minute.
And I love that they feel bad about it. They're just like, oh, Godzilla's gonna blow up. And they're like, get out of there! Get out! Like, I like that. That's like the stuff that I love about these movies, is that he's like terrifying, and then sometimes he can like help out. It depends, the situation. The context is everything with Godzilla situations.
Can't live with him, can't live without him.
Yeah, I enjoy Godzilla as like curmudgeonly but basically a good guy, which is sort of how he's been in these movies recently that you've been watching. I'm in sort of heaven with his depiction here. This is how I like him.
You know me, I hate the one when they're like, Godzilla is all God, pure form, he is the next form, he is God. I'm always like, guys, that's bullshit. He's literally killing everyone. So these, right. These like tired, exhausted, again, just probably knowing he's stemming from King Kong, my love of him, but exhausted Godzilla I'm here for. Like kind of derpy.
I kind of like that scene where that guy gets connected to that big balloon, and then the woman's like, well, maybe he'll reach Infant Island. And then he just does. He not only does he reach Infant Island, he crashes like in the very center of their entire like little ceremony. I mean, it's kind of incredible, really.
Well, and not only that, but he crashes on Infant Island, and then it takes them 3 days to row back. So we are to believe that that's how fast he was going.
He's just like manifesting the shit out of what he needs to be done, and the universe is really pulling for him.
Yeah, he's the lucky guy. He picked the right dance contest. He picked the right boat with the bank robber on it.
There you go. You just got a one-way balloon ticket to Infant Island. Upside down.
His foot gets caught, and so he gets lifted up by his ankle, but then he very quickly does like a rock climber, like unties it and like sticks it under his like leg and hip so that he's like supported and like deftly. And I'm to believe that that's not his first balloon ride.
Again, to tie back to like what you like about this movie, it kind of makes sense because he's like from a fisher family, so he would know knots, he would know rigging.
If he was like a modern guy, like in modern times with the internet, I imagine him just to be the type of person that just watched like a shit ton of random YouTube tutorials and just knows a lot of random skills from hours on the internet.
He does look like a guy that, trips up on things and maybe has been floated up by a few balloons in his life.
Well, that's a good note to end on. Poor little Ryota floating on a balloon and how lucky his ass is. Let's go to the judgment.
Judgment has come.
You better get ready for the judgment. For those of you who have not joined us here before on Godzillavangelists, it is our holy duty to assign each movie its proper place in the Godzilla afterlife. We can consign it to Godzilla heaven, purgatory, or hell, based on how we feel about it and how it fits in some way, to Godzilla movies and movies as a whole. I'm going to throw this on to Sam.
I think, I think that it's a purgatory for me. But, again, it's not unenjoyable. And I think that there's, it is probably the second most likely one that I would just put on silently during a party, which I do now. I'll do that, and it's like a fun topic of conversation for people. So this one, yeah, it's good. I also feel like I should give a disclaimer, which is that it may have been the print that I saw. It was kind of dingy. It didn't look as good as some of the others, and I'm realizing that might have just been that I didn't see a very good version of it, more than it actually being ugly.
It's shot pretty well, so it's probably just the print you were watching.
That's a piece that I missed. So I'm giving it a purgatory, but I like it.
Let's move on. Joanna, you want to judge Godzilla versus Monster Zero?
Yeah, purgatory. I remember being pretty bored while I was watching it, but now looking back on it fondly from, the third time around, I'm like, yeah, that was really fun. I don't know. Like, yeah, if it's on, maybe I'd watch it. I probably won't ever in my life be like, wow, you know what I'm feeling right now? Monster Zero. Where can I find that film?
You know what, Joanna? I bet at some point in your life you're going to watch this movie again, whether you want to or not.
Whoa, is that a threat?
Todd, what is your judgment?
Oh, this movie sits firmly in Godzillavangelists for me.
I know you talked about the main driving reason for your love, but do you want to drop just one more thing that helps clinch it for you? What especially takes it to Godzilla Heaven?
Yeah, I mean the '60s pop, just like it just the kind of pop look of the '60s or whatever. That's just what I adore. It's what I always want in this kind of movie. And then you get Godzilla doing dances that are funny and stuff like that. I mean, you got me forever.
It's like your first crush; you never forget. But my judgment, it's funny. The more we talk about this, the more positive I feel. Like the more like the hazy, misty, watercolored memories create a beautiful rainbow in my brain. I think it still just misses heaven, though. I think it sits in purgatory. It just doesn't do anything especially special. The best thing about it is indeed the 60s like pulpy vibe, both in the script and the visuals. And it's kind of interesting for like telling a Godzilla story where Godzilla is far from the central driving force in it. In the end, not great.
Wah.
Who would like to judge Ebirah first?
I think it's pretty known, said all the things, but this definitely goes in heaven for me. I would watch this one again if I had to, and it's right up there with good old 98. So it's this one, 98, and the original hanging in heaven for me. Just, the Scooby-Doo vibes, the tired Godzilla, a little bit of romance at the end, the hot lead, the music, all over the place. It really works.
I came here expecting to have to defend this one. I didn't know you guys would be all such homies because I came here being like, I'm going to ruffle some feathers saying that I liked this one a lot. But yeah, I agree. And I think that I did feel like the end got slow. And this is a terrible thing to say on a Godzilla podcast, but once it became about the monster fights, it lost me a little bit. I'm just going to have to live with that. Like, it was just a lot of it, and we lost track of what our guys were doing. And I was like, are they going to stop the bomb and make the fake juice? And like that, it wasn't important at the end. But I liked it. I'm going to put it, it's in heaven. It sneaks into heaven. And I was ready to say that people like to defend myself, and people would be like, heaven, what? Well, you didn't put Mothra versus Godzilla or Mothra in heaven. And I'd be like, yeah, well, I would way rather rewatch this one, and I just watched it. So there it is.
You actually did put Mothra in heaven the first time, although I think you downgraded it in retrospect or something.
This time I'm putting it in hell.
Oh no, I love Mothra. Come on.
Right through his heart.
Every time it's one layer lower.
I love this movie as well. I think it's totally awesome. It's a really fun 60s sci-fi adventure. It's got like a groovy soundtrack with a lot of fun stuff going on. They even throw in like we talked about the James Bond stuff, but we didn't talk about all the gags. They have all these gags in it, like the old moving bush trick, They just have like tons of like classic little moments, and it's really, really fun. Familiar faces that we all love, and some funny lines. Yeah, and then Godzilla really going in for some seafood and snapping off Ebirah's hands or whatever. Pretty badass. So definitely Godzilla heaven for me.
Really fast, I have a question actually for Todd and Ryan. Is it because I'm still rattled over the negative impression, the negative internet opinions I was seeing on this one. And is it that people don't like it because Ebirah was just in one? Is that what it is? Is like Ebirah's the weird monster? Is that what it is?
No, because Violante is in just one of them, and people love that one. So I think it's just different people. What lists are you looking up? Because I by the way, I think Reddit has the best lists.
I did not go to Reddit. I just Google searched Godzilla movies ranked. Is that what it was?
Yeah. Because everywhere else, you're not going to have like real Godzilla fans. You're going to have like a bunch of websites that are just like doing an obligatory, like there's a Godzilla movie coming out, so we got to make a list kind of thing. And they don't know what they're talking about.
That is interesting you say that because good. Okay. And then Reddit is where I'll go because my James Bond fandom is the same way where it's like every time I look up a Bond ranking, it's like, Dalton ones suck, and it's like, have you guys watched these? Like, they're not the worst. So
I'll dispute what Todd said a little bit because as a freelance writer, I know sometimes you try to get that assignment if you are a fan, and I know people who have written these lists for whatever random site sometimes are actually big fans. So sometimes you are getting the genuine opinion. I think generally you actually do see Ebirah in the bottom half, often even the bottom quarter. I don't really know why, although I think you might have a point in that Ebirah is such a weak monster. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, I've been learning this, a lot of Godzilla fans are like into like power ranking the movies, basically, like how badass the monsters in them are. And yeah, so I think maybe that's an element, but that's such a small thing. I don't know why this is often not appreciated as one of the higher ranked ones.
It is interesting. This is just the Wikipedia page, but like if you're at Horror of the Deep, it definitely gives off the wrong vibe of what you get back from the film. Horror of the Deep, he's in it for like 2 minutes max. The rest is a straight comedy.
Well, he's not that deep. He's actually usually in fairly shallow water.
Yeah, he's definitely treading water. Ebirah treading water.
What's funny, actually, is that Ebirah's name comes from ebi, which is the Japanese word for shrimp. So Ebirah is actually a shrimp. He's a jumbo shrimp.
I'm the horror of the deep. It's me, the big lobster. The horror of the deep. I look like a lobster, basically. It's basically the exact same thing that you get when you eat a lobster, but I'm just bigger.
He's mutated or something. I don't know.
I think that might be much more terrifying if it was a jumbo shrimp, but shrimp don't have claws, so that doesn't make any sense to me.
See, here's the thing is that, yeah, we're looking at him and we're like, he's kind of weak. He's, for a lobster, like he's a big lobster, but he's horrifying if he's a shrimp. Relative to a shrimp, that is a nightmare. Are you kidding?
Who called me a shrimp?
Todd, I love this impression you're doing. I'm getting very much Ken Jeong vibes, and I'm really loving all of it.
Like I said, I hadn't seen this in such a long time, and my opinion was being swayed by the masses. I was just always like, oh, this is somewhere near the bottom. But now I'm on a crusade to lift this one up, because it deserves it. This movie is just so much fun. Speaking of which, this next movie we're going to watch is my ultimate crusade movie. Because even more than Ebirah, it is ranked at the very bottom very often. And it's completely undeserving, in my opinion. We are going to watch Son of Godzilla. This is exciting, I think. My sister is going to be here, so you get to hear the stories of somebody who grew up with me, this madman, and someone who played Godzilla with me a lot growing up. So I'm really excited to do it. I hope you guys are too. We're still trying to expand our audience. We've been seeing a lot more people coming in, and that's exciting. If you really like this show, share us with your friends, rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on whatever podcast app you use, follow our social media, share our social media especially. That's really important. You guys are the reason that we do this, and we want as many people as possible. So thanks again for joining us, Todd, and I'm going to let everybody go free into this sweet hot night.
Float away in a bubble, UFO.
Good night.
Good night, guys.
Ryan, that's very impressive sound effect.
That was a good sound.
Godzillavangelists is produced by me, Ryan Sargent, with support from my friends Joanna Brodecki and Sam Schleicher. All our incredible music is composed by Robert Mai, and our wonderful artwork is drawn by Cassidy Stone. This episode was edited by the ever-capable Julia Waldman. Special thanks to our families, friends, and the talented artists who made the movies that we talked about today. Godzillavangelists is a satirical, critical work, not affiliated or endorsed by Toho, Legendary Pictures, or anyone behind the Godzilla series. Visit our website at GodzillaVangelists.com. We're also on Twitter at GodzillaCast and Instagram at GodzillaVangelists. If you prefer to listen to us online, we have a YouTube channel. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you join us again next time. In the meantime, keep spreading the word of Godzilla.